Hi everyone, how's it going? This is Eden of Light Cycle Astrology. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are having a great new year so far and had a happy holiday season. I'm back in the saddle making content for 2025. I took about a month sabbatical off to just recharge the batteries and spend some much needed time with my family over the holidays. And I wanted just to focus on that. But we are taking a look at some of the first astrology coming in on the channel for 2025. And this week, for me, the important thing that is coming through for us is going to be Mars having moved in its retrograde motion back into the sign of Cancer, which happened Monday this week. And then over the next couple of weeks, we're going to get a second iteration of Mars forming a trine to Neptune, which is going to be hanging around for the next couple of weeks until about the 20th of January. Now, it actually perfects this week at the end on, I believe it's Sunday. But just because this aspect is hanging around so long, it struck me as kind of one of the important astrology things to take a look at on the channel. And so we'll take a look today at the timing of this. We'll pull up the real-time clock here in a moment. And then we'll also get into 5 of my themes or things that you may notice that can accompany such an aspect as Mars making a trine to Neptune, especially between the signs of Pisces and Cancer. So we are very interestingly revisiting not only what it's like to have Mars go through the sign of Cancer and being retrograde, it's moving back into that sign, right? So there are things that may have moved out or away from our lives for a time and maybe coming back in, and we may recognize or remember things that were going on not that long ago that may sort of be coming back at this time because we're seeing this planet move back into this sign that it spent so much time in 2024. But also we're getting this second iteration of Mars making a trine to Neptune, which is something that happened as Mars was in direct motion in 2024, right before it moved into the sign of Leo. We got this Mars trine Neptune in Pisces aspect for the first time. We're getting a second iteration of that perfecting this week and is hanging around for the next couple of weeks until the 20th of January. And then we're actually going to get a third iteration of this as Mars finishes up the retrograde in the sign of Cancer and then heads out of the sign of Cancer back into the sign of Leo in direct motion. And by this time, which is around April, maybe I think it's around April 20th, we actually get a third or final iteration of this transit, Mars trining Neptune. But this time Neptune will have by that point moved into the sign of Aries. So a really big sign change for an outer planet. So while there is going to be some dovetailing of themes because we're still talking about Mars trine Neptune, we're going to get a much different coloration of this aspect. Whereas this second iteration this week and next week is going to feel a lot more like maybe some of the past things or themes that we were working with in 2024. So that's the agenda today. Now, before we get into it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit notifications so you don't miss any videos. You can always find me at lightcycleastrology.com, or you can find me at edanmabon@gmail.com. I'm going to put that in the link below. One thing that might change for us is we might decide to sort of make a more direct contact through social media platforms, or just even my email. Just in a way to simplify connecting with clients and also cutting costs. It costs about $400 a year for me to re-up on the website subscription, and it just seems like that's a pretty big chunk, and it kind of doesn't make sense to do business in that way. Why waste that kind of money when you can just have somebody DM you or find you on socials? So in the year ahead, I think we'll be switching that over. But as of right now, we still have the website if you want to get a hold of me, or you can find me at edanmabon@gmail.com. Okay, let's get into the real-time clock here, and then we'll get into the then we'll get into the themes to watch for. All right. So here we go. So here we have, let me just go back to right now. All right. So, and then we'll go back to Monday. I actually meant to make this video on Monday, but it wasn't in the cards, as they say. So Monday, January the 6th, 2025, you can see that Mars has just re-entered the sign of Cancer and is immediately beginning to form a trine to Neptune in Pisces, Neptune being at the very end of Pisces. So we get this trine that immediately begins to form. And let me just put up the titles real quick here. By the way, Mars will be in Cancer from January 6th until April the 20th. And so we get this completion of the retrograde. But Mars moved back into Cancer just a couple of days ago. And then this week, Mars is making that trine. And again, this is the second iteration of that trine to Neptune. Now, if you notice, as we talk about themes or things to watch for here coming up, if you notice that there are simply things that were happening at the tail end of last year, you may notice a sort of tie-in, or they may sort of come back around as this next couple of weeks is unfolding here. And the exact last time that we had this was late October. So right around Halloween of last year, we had the first Mars trine Neptune aspect that was sort of coming through. So if you journal, or if you just have a good memory, which I do not, but if you can sort of somehow remember, and oftentimes this astrology is going to help you remember exactly what was going on, but there may be some tie-in with that late October period specifically, or just the end of 2024. Now, Mars is, let's walk this forward and take a look at the perfection when the angle actually becomes exact, as we say today. So this is happening on Sunday for us, right around Sunday, January the 12th here. We're going to get Mars at 27 degrees Cancer, perfecting to Neptune at 27 degrees Pisces. And then I was actually kind of surprised, because this hangs around a lot longer than I thought it would. Check this out. If we just go forward here, Mars kind of just going slowly backwards through Cancer, you see that trine blue line back to Neptune is just is holding on until around the 20th, 19th, or the 20th of January, and then it is sort of fading out by then. Now it's possible that it could even still be close enough to Neptune where it even lasts a bit longer than that, but probably by around the 20th or earlier, this Neptune trine Mars energy, or Mars trine Neptune energy, is going to be fading out. But it may be that if we go back to Sunday of this week, that there is, this week has maybe a slight heavier feeling around it, or something like that. So that is this particular aspect. Now let's do one more thing before we get into what to watch for. If we go ahead on the clock by weeks now, what happens is, actually, let me just take everything out so this is easier to look at here. All right. We'll just take all the planets out except for Mars and Neptune. Boom. Okay, there we go. So watch this. If we go forward ahead by weeks now, so we go through January, and we go through, we start getting into the middle of, the middle of February. We see there is Mars stationing to turn direct at about 17 degrees of Cancer. And then we go forward from there, and we see that by March 30th, Neptune has moved into Aries. Big sign change. We have Mars still in the sign of Cancer. Did I just say Mars into Aries? Okay. I hope I didn't say that. By March 30th, we have Neptune moving into the sign of Aries, and we have Mars still in the sign of Cancer. And then if we go forward about April 20th, we have Mars jumping back into the sign of Leo, finishing up the retrograde a couple weeks back, moving into direct motion and picking up speed, sign changing, and then once again we get this third and final iteration between Mars and Neptune by Trine, but it's in different signs now. So these are fire signs that this is happening, and very interesting because one of the big themes or things that is definitely going along with the first two iterations of this aspect is, of course, a lot of water. There's a lot of water with Cancer and Pisces, Neptune being a god of water. So that is the timing of some of this stuff that is playing out for us. And so there you go. Okay, let's get into the themes or things you may notice. Of course, the first thing that probably a lot of us might notice is this sort of enigmatic anger. So that would be theme number one. And this simply just means that there may be frustration or challenges or anger or conflicts, any kind of Mars thing, but for some reason, you just can't quite grasp it all the way. That Neptune being in the dominant position, sort of impacting Mars when Neptune is behind in zodiacal order in Pisces, a few signs back. Neptune being to the right in the zodiac actually is the one striking Mars with the ray. Now, technically, Neptune is invisible or doesn't have its own reflected light that we can see. So maybe the ancient astrological interpretation of striking with a ray is a moot point. But be that as it may, we're still seeing that Neptune is sort of in this dominant position. And so it's Marsy things that may just be hard to grasp, hard to really pinpoint or understand. You know, it's like if you get angry at somebody, there's almost like this nebulousness around it. You don't fully understand it. You know that you're bothered or you're upset, but you can't quite understand the situation, maybe the reason for the emotion, maybe what to do about it or how to proceed and take action. There's just kind of this floating in the middle of the ocean, being in that emotion and feeling it, but just for whatever reason, you just don't have a sharp, resolved kind of understanding or total picture of it. It just has this quality to it that is enigmatic. So that's theme number one. Pretty simple. Okay, theme or thing you may notice number two is going to be the tide returns you back into the fray. And I'm just going to read off of my notes because I liked how I worded this. Okay, the tide returns you back into the fray. Supportive waves that carry you back into a challenge or spiritual battle. I came up with this thing as a possible second thing you may notice because this is something that I noticed right away when Mars went back into Cancer on Monday this week. I remembered back to the end of 2024 in October, and I remembered there was a very specific kind of spiritual turmoil that I was dealing with. And it had this kind of quality of like a low confidence or not being totally sure. And in my chart, it falls in my 9th house. So there was very specific things. And that's an important thing. If you take a look at your whole sign house where Cancer is, you may notice that it has connection to those house topics or domains. And for me, it was the 9th. So I won't get into exactly the specifics of it, but it definitely, there was this kind of spiritual turmoil or battle that it effaced on the outside world. There was a tangible thing in the outside world that represented it, But whatever the outside circumstance was, it had this effect of being, for me, something that was really emotional. It was internal, it was inside, and it was as as much as there was a tangible thing that I was working with externally, there was just as much work that was happening because of that on the inside. So it was a very, it wasn't just like some transits you get, oh, your car broke down, or somebody busted your window out in your car and you have to fix it. And there's just like this very concrete kind of like, there's there's the astrology. And sometimes it's all external. This one for me was very mirrored. It was very mirrored. So why could this be? Because trine aspects testify to such things as community support, favorable or lucky conditions, sometimes growth, or people coming in the form of allies. Mars returning to a sign it was not long ago through backwards motion makes me wonder what life conditions, support, or tidal force is washing us back into Mars in Cancer themes we were working on previously. So, for instance, work in the home or the family dimension, definitely with Mars and Cancer, can come up. So, we may be revisiting some of the spiritual battles that come along with what we're dealing with in the home or the family or something like that. But it's in that dimension, possibly. Or it could be work we're doing to bring tangible things to us. This is another thing that we have to really understand about Mars and Cancer. Cancer, it is the rising sign of the thema mundi, the birth of the world. So it's the home of moon, right? It's the domicile of the moon. And because of that, we're talking about the sublunar realm, or i.e. the realm in the tangible world. So, and it's also very much connected to birth, right? It's the existential or quintessential mother, as it were, right? It's the birth of the world, the things that are happening in the worldly sphere below the moon. And so it can be that when Mars is in Cancer, we get a kind of motivation or drive to do something in the world or to birth something in the world. So that can fall into all kinds of things. It can be ambition in work. It can be something at home and family. But it makes it broad because it can be something that for us is like a tangible thing that we're trying to materialize in some way or birth in some way. So if you look back to October-ish 2024 was something you're working on that had to do with just manifesting and materializing something, is that sort of coming back around in a certain way that also maybe comes along with some kind of internal struggle or, spiritual battle or challenge that is coming along with that. Or it could be perhaps a battle we previously fought internally in our emotional bodies or on a soul level. I think that is kind of all of the things that I noticed the last time that this aspect happened back in October for me personally. So you may notice that as well. Okay, now let's move on to number 3 here. So the brittle knife is what I would say is another possible version of the same kind of archetypal things coming at us with Mars trine Neptune. The brittle knife, if you think about Mars and Neptune, a lot of times, especially because this is happening in water signs, a lot of times when Neptune touches Mars, we can just simply feel weak, lethargic, unmotivated, lazy, procrastinating, indulgent, or we can defer sensibility over like more romantic feelings, recreational things that we want to do, even escapism, or even things like a unifying feeling. Like if you prefer to socialize or have parties or something, instead of doing that more like maybe Saturnine kind of work, but this can be a time where we may catch ourselves deferring certain things or shifting certain things in our life in order to experience more romantic, recreational, escapist, or unifying. Um, Now, at its worst, this can also have a connection with poison. So I'll talk about that here in a second. But why? With Neptune in the dominant position again over Mars in this configuration, moving back into a place of low dignity. If we think about Mars in ancient astrology being in Cancer, the sign of Mars's fall or depression, which simply means that Mars is not dignified. Mars does not have the royal banners flying in Cancer. It struggles a lot, and it struggles to lift or come back up. It's like the underdog, right? That is trying to come back up in some way. That's the battle of any planet in the sign of its depression. Now, Mars usually has the ability to exert a sharp burst of vigorous energy or driving motivation, but in this aspect, in particular, in these water signs, being touched by the god of water itself, Neptune, Mars might be softened, diluted. That Marsy push might be diluted in some way. I think about the image of a knife that's been dropped into the ocean, and you pull it out after many years, and it's rusted, and because it's rusted, it's brittle. So you might almost get this imagery, this archetypal imagery of kind of like your normal ability to burst or exert somehow just it's weak. It's feeling lethargic, unmotivated. It's rusty or brittle or dull. It just doesn't have that super sharp cutting action like when you sharpen a knife that you've been using in your kitchen for a year, and then you sharpen it one day and you're like, holy mackerel, this is 1,000 times easier to cut, right? This is perhaps a time when that edge to Mars just isn't great, or things can become blurry when touched by Neptune. This transit also happens inside two water signs, and so this makes me think of emotional stuff, like big emotions, big dream time kind of aspect, vast ideals, philosophical fanaticism even, but not much drive to get off the couch and make it happen is the point. So this can be what we need, actually, sometimes. Sometimes it's not always great to get off the couch. Sometimes we need that time as a couch potato. It's sometimes rejuvenating to not always be driving towards some pragmatic thing, so long as it doesn't go too far, which can actually happen with this aspect. So you want to be careful of that. Now, the poison, why do I say that Mars trine Neptune can relate or be associated with poison? Well, poison in one form, I guess you could say, is one of the things that can happen with this aspect, because Mars can represent something deadly, right? Something dangerous, deadly, not good for you, malefic, all those kinds of things. And you combine that with Neptune. Neptune can also represent things that are deceptive, or what's the word? Deceptive, deluded, murky, hard to see, but it's like kind of like that deceptive that you have when you don't realize you're having too much to drink or something like that, and then all of a sudden here comes Mars, and it sort of sneaks up on you and sort of poisons the moment, and you get sick or something like that. So there can be also this like sub theme for me around poisons with Mars and Neptune. So you do want to be careful about indulging too much in something that can be poisonous in the wrong amount or something like that, right? Okay, now let's go to theme or thing. You may notice number 4. Water soothes the burn and cleans the cut. I like this one. This one's a bit more positive here. Healers, saviors, or sacrifice connected to challenges, conflict, or fallen or broken situations. Mars in Cancer is in that sort of fallen or broken situation. So what does that represent specifically for your life, right? Mars in Cancer is going to represent something that there's a struggle to fix it. There's a struggle to rise it back up. There's a struggle that may be connected with lunar things. So whether that's health, body, family, home, relationships, mother, um, a circumstance within the world that's really important and central, whatever it is, that could represent something that's sort of fallen, broken, kind of not in a great situation. Neptune usually represents a dissolving agent and can dissolve the sense of the individual ego. This is one thing that's interesting, especially in the sign of Pisces. Neptune can be the kind of agent that dissolves, interestingly enough, Mars kind of attributes. So whereas we were saying in the last theme that maybe that's a negative because your individual Mars sharpness is maybe diluted and more challenging to work with. But in this level, we turn it and we say, well, maybe that actually is a positive insofar as when the ego is out of the way, we can see more soft, emotional, empathetic, selfless sacrifice showing up to support Mars fallen as he attempts to rise. So if there's a Mars fallen situation, we can be an agent that is selfless and empathetic towards somebody else and is helping them in their fallen Mars moment. Or if we're dealing with the fallen Mars moment, somebody can come along that can represent that Neptune that is acting selfless, sacrificial, something like that, that can help us. This is a trine aspect, so we see the positive things potentially coming out of this because trines are usually more positive kinds of things to experience, or they bring support or something like that. But for example, let's say that you've had some conflict with someone in your family, and a friend calls and is listening to your problems, perhaps even providing some kind of relief or counsel that releases some of those difficult emotions, and just is an ear or like a friend that can sort of help you through it, right? That's the kind of thing we might expect with this kind of aspect. In some way, the water may soothe the burn or clean the cut. That's sort of the point here. Okay, and theme number 5 is going to be higher fecundity around Mars things. This one also pretty interesting. Mars seeks to take on flesh. Almost, I sort of had a difficult time choosing which title to pick for this theme. It was either going to be high fecundity around Mars things, which I'll explain in a moment, but it could very well also be something like Mars seeks to take on flesh. One thing about me is I've lived in Hawaii for about half of my life, and in Hawaii, there's this strong connection with the religion of Rastafari or Rastafarianism. And one thing that in my youth, being around this friends that were Rastafarians and stuff like this, and just being in this culture in Hawaii, there was always this this Rastafarian spiritual thing that was about things taking on flesh. Usually it was about the spoken word. And I think it goes back to some scripture in the Bible that says that the word takes on flesh, or the word has power. If you say it, it can materialize. It will take on flesh in the world. Now, Mars in Cancer, in a sign that again is connected with birth in the world or the birth of the world. Mars is trying to take on worldly flesh of some kind, right? So you get dreams that provide perhaps fertile growth of that which we want born in the world, or that which we may want to destroy in the world, or even both simultaneously together. Why, or what am I talking about? One thing that happened the last time we had this transit was an escalation of war between Iran and Israel. This archetypal combination can represent an increased level of fertility or metastasize Mars things due to the theme of Neptune in a Jupiter-ruled water sign, the trine being of the nature of Jupiter itself, and Mars also being in a water sign related to birth. So every which way you turn this interpretation, you get water, growth, fertility, bigness, vastness. We're talking about big emotions, big ideals, haughty zeal, religious fanaticism at times, passionate morality, angry philosophy that can come in and inundate or flood you, that is seeking birth in the world. So in other words, it can go both ways, but for instance, for the conflict that is happening in the Middle East, when this aspect rolled around the first time, you think about what it's like to be those people fighting. On both sides, the fighting has to happen because there is kind of a justification for it, right? You have to justify anything that you do, especially if it's in that realm of war, don't you? I mean, you'd have to be thinking, well, I'm in the right. I'm justified in launching these missiles at this country, and I know people are going to die, but somehow you rationalize that, all right? Or somebody has to be the soldier that pushes the button, or there has to be a kind of malaise around even thinking about it, which also is kind of Neptunian. But either way you cut it, there's a kind of zeal or fanaticism that comes along with it, and that's Mars Neptune, right, in these two water signs. It doesn't have to be something quite so negative and destructive as war, but we did see that the last time. This is coinciding with the first time and the last time that we had this iteration of this aspect coming through. So quite clearly that is in alignment with the more negative side of this. So you have to sort of watch for what kind of things is Mars like. What's the? It's like Neptune, the Trine, Pisces, Cancer, all of those things are sort of like raising up the sperm count, right, of Mars. And Mars can either be about this or that, but it's like things around Mars are very fertile. So we have to be careful around how is Mars going to take on flesh, because it's like you got to be careful in the bedroom with Mars right now, because we can see some offspring coming out of this. We can see some tangible things that materialize and take on flesh. We can see some Mars babies come out of this. So, like, quite literally, this could be even just an aspect for higher fertility in a couple that's looking to start a family or something like that. So that is theme number 5. I hope you guys found this interesting. Please let me know in the comments anything that is interesting to you, or anything you notice about the astrology as we go forward here. And it feels good to be back, so I'll be making content now more regularly, and I apologize for the lapse in content, but it feels good to be back, and it feels like I have a fresh look at how to make content and make good content for you guys on the channel. So hope you guys enjoy this, and I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.